Mr. Kuzmanovic, I take it you're being on your feet that you'll address the chamber first.
That's correct, Your Honor.
Please
Thank you.
Please proceed.
As a preliminary matter, Your Honors, item 9 of the Chamber's email relating to oral argument will withdraw paragraph 228 of our final brief. However, will not change any of the numbering after that, because otherwise it's going to throw things off. So, just as a preliminary matter.
Since you started with practical matter, would you allow me just, if a list of footnotes is given to Mr. Tiger for inspection, Mr. K, would you please also provide a copy to the other defense teams and perhaps one to the chamber as well? So that
absolutely, Your Honor.
Yes. Mr. Kuzmanovic, that's 228 is stricken. Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Before I begin, I would like to just let the Chamber know and all of the parties that I will be talking about command responsibility issues, certain issues relating to artillery, specific crimes relating to General Markač, and Mr. Goličić will discuss the armed conflict issue and JCE. Before I begin my presentation, I think it would be remiss of us all, having been here 2.5 years, not to thank the staff, the court officers, specifically Mr. Nielsen, the technical staff, all of the legal officers, the court reporter, the guards who treat our clients and us with respect, and last but not least, the interpreters for their work, because without them, we wouldn't be heard. So, preliminarily, it's a custom in my jurisdiction to do something like that, and given the fact that we've been together for so long, I think it's appropriate to do. Your Honor, colleagues across the well, and learned defense counsel, the Office of the Prosecutor's final brief, in our view, contains many misconceptions and a thorough lack of analysis of facts as applied to law, especially regarding General Markač. The OTP's final brief is rife with conclusory leaps and attributions without underlying citation to the record. We've heard some of that in the last day and a half. Overall, what stands out as a rhetorical pattern: recite general facts, allege specific conclusions and legal consequences, and provide no evidence. The same pattern generally has been followed in closing argument. The result is essentially an invitation to this chamber to commit serious factual and legal error. I trust the chamber will most definitely not do that. The OTP has failed to demonstrate the connection which the case law requires with respect to General Markač specifically, a nexus between crimes and a specific failure on the part of the commander. At first I thought the rhetorical pattern was only contained in the brief, but then not after listening to yesterday's presentation. In particular, Mr. Russo, at page 45 of yesterday's argument regarding artillery, cites Zdravko Janić, Special Police Commander, called by the prosecution. Mr. Russo said Janić, quote, testified that there were no military targets inside the town of Gračac proper, end quote. But when one looks at his transcript reference, which is transcript page 63 to 94, this does not exist. In fact, Gračac is never mentioned. If we could show the document, please, with the transcript reference. Janić talks about his own axis of attack, which does not include Gračac's. The transcript reference, and I will paraphrase beginning at line 18, you said that there were predetermined targets. Were there any predetermined targets in civilian populated areas in your line of attack? Answer, no, there weren't. Which stage are we talking about? The first stage of Operation Storm, the entire operation. The question is Operation Storm, first stage on the 4th and 5th of August. Mr. Janich continues to describe his line attack, which did not include Grachets. He states, "This was an uninhabited area. There weren't even villages in that area in my line of attack." Further on, he's asked, what were the predetermined targets? Were they soldiers, or were there any other military installations or equipment? What were the targets? The predetermined targets, he answers, were the enemy positions and the depth of their defense line, the artillery positions, their command post, their depots. The targets were the enemy infrastructure that they used to defend their line. Those were the exclusive targets that we had. Whenever conducting an operation, well, it wasn't possible to have any other targets. All the targets were military targets. The purpose was to break through the enemy defense line and to attain the operation's objectives. It wasn't possible to have any other objectives. He was never asked about Grachets. The attribution is false. Interestingly, in reviewing the 98 bis arguments, Mr. Russo made the same argument. I actually made the same rebuttal. Let's talk about what Mr. Russo ignored during his artillery discussion regarding special police. He ignored the testimony of Josip Turkal, a witness called by the prosecution. The man in charge of special police use of artillery after the initial defense lines were breached. And the transcript references there are 13,697, 13,703 to 707. In that testimony, Mr. Turkal discusses that there were 15 rounds of artillery for Grachets. 15. And the accusation that Grachet was excessively shelled holds no water. Turkal had specific instructions to ensure that civilians would not be in harm's way as far as artillery was concerned, and that there were at least 3 military targets in the town itself. Mr. Russo ignores P-102, UNMO report, which incidentally reports that 15 shells fell in the area of Grachets on August 4th, and P-111 at H3, which describes main artillery impacts on the main junction in Grachets. This was Croatian artillery pursuing the retreating ARSK forces described in P-108. Another UNMO report discussing the ARSK withdrawal of tanks and artillery from Grachets. Mr. Russo also ignored the prosecution's artillery expert, Lieutenant Colonel Konings. He had no opinions critical of special police's use of artillery in Operation Storm. The prosecution never even asked him whether he should review the use of artillery in Operation Storm by the special police, including targeting issues. That transcript reference 14775 to 76. Finally, Mr. Russo ignores page 21 of P401, which Mr. Kehoe discussed. It said General Ferrand, referring to the Croatian military's use of artillery, said it was excellent. Mr. Teager, in his opening statement, described the special police as, quote, "From the virtual outset of entering towns and villages, the special police began committing crimes," end quote. We had discussed this many times in our presentation of our defense, in our 98 bis arguments, in our briefing. Guilt by proximity. Let's look at where perhaps Mr. Teager may have gotten this. Let's look at General Leslie's interview, D329-3. First of all, if we go up a little bit, I'm sorry. The first reference is on page 2, again with respect to artillery. The transcript of this interview describes General Leslie talking about how he's a professional artillery, and he can comment it with some degree of validity. He says, at the second last sentence, it killed a lot of civilians and will never know the exact number, but estimates range from 10 to 25,000 dead. And we all know that's completely false. As a matter of fact, it's a lie. If we go to page 3, Mr. Leslie, General Leslie again, talks about the special police at a time when he wasn't even in Sector South. There were a variety of organizations that then swept into the former Serbian Krajina. They were special police teams wearing the very distinctive blue uniforms, engaging in hunting and killing in the mountains of Serbian civilians. And I saw dozens and dozens of farmhouses and even villages burning many, many days, in some cases months, after the initial assault had taken place. Again, blue uniforms identifying special police in the Serbian Krajina, not anywhere specifically. Again, complete fabrication. Special police did not wear blue uniforms. Special police were not engaged in hunting and killing in the mountains of Serb civilians. I'd like to now go through certain portions of the prosecution's brief. Paragraph 387. The first sentence here is particularly galling and brazen. It says that Markač ordered persecution, and if we go further in that second line, and in relation to Grubery, murder. There is no citation, factual basis for that comment. None. Think about that for a minute. Prosecution would have you believe that General Markač ordered in relation to Grubery murder. There's no exhibit reference, no transcript reference, nothing. Further in that same paragraph, the OTP again states, as fact, and without attribution, quote, Markač was aware that his forces were engaged in criminal conduct against the Serbian community, end quote. No site, no exhibit number, transcript reference. Other references. Paragraph 386 of the prosecution's brief states that Markač reported false information regarding his subordinates' crimes and suppressed their investigation. This is a severely misleading characterization of the evidence the court has heard. The omission of the legal standard here is striking. Superiors are entitled, even expected, to rely on information provided by subordinates. More importantly, the relevant period for evaluating the reasonableness of reliance on reports is the time they were provided and subsequently forwarded to higher units. The Nuremberg-Rendulic rule clearly reflects a rejection of hindsight as a standard of judgment. In the case of United States versus List, otherwise known as the Control Council 10 case out of Nuremberg, the court there succinctly stated the standard, which is well-established customary international law, by which a commander is to be judged without hindsight. And I will quote from pages 1296 and 97 of that decision. Quote, we are obliged to judge the situation as it appeared to the defendant at the time. If the facts were such as would justify action by exercise of judgment after giving consideration all the factors and existing possibilities, even though the conclusion reached may have been faulty, it cannot be said to be criminal, end quote. General Markač forwarded all the reports later alleged to have been false in the midst of high operational tempo and when information was thin. The record includes at least 2 attempts by General Markač to ensure that his